Next item is public comments. No one has approached me relative to public comments. Does anybody wish to make a public comment? Any public comments? If not, we will move on to the next item, which is the approval of the April 12th minutes. What are your wishes? Moved by Leahy. Is there a second? Seconded by Lemmer. Any questions, comments? If not, all is in favor of approval of the minutes will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
No,
Yeah, so we'll take.
that was done at the last.
Oh, I'm sorry, we carried that over, so we're not doing that today. April 12th, yeah. All right, so because it's not here, we will withdraw the motions and second? All right, thank you. All right, next policy. Well, then operational functions. We will go to the, then we're going to start out with an overview of both bonding issues or borrowing issues, and we'll turn it over to Christy for an overview and presentation from PMA.
While you're getting ready, I've got two call-in users. The first one, 6154, ending in 28. Would you identify yourself, please? Other call-in user, 7152, ending in 00. If you'd identify yourself, please.
Supervisor Marshall.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. What I wanted to do right now is just give you a little introduction to our bonds. We had initial resolution for $24,165,000 for a 2022 CIP, and then the continuation of the North Central Healthcare bonds, and that was of $19,225,000 in general obligation healthcare bonds. Those initial resolutions for the first one came in March. We have gone out to sale for those bonds today at 10 a.m. and we have the bids back. And we want to provide you the information as presented so that you can take a look at those, see how we did in the market, and then hopefully propose a resolution to be moved forward to County Board this evening. At your last meeting in May, your May meeting, you approved these resolutions in form only so that we could take those bids today. So what I will do is just start out by telling you that we did get winning bids that we'll be providing to you today. We did have interest in both of those bonds. And as you can see, we have the two resolutions coming to you today. And due to the nature of the way we were able to get our bids back on the original bond for the 2022A, we were able to reduce the size of the issuance from the $24,165,000 to $23,915,000. And with that, what I will do is turn it over to Kristen Hansen at PFM, Public Financial Management. They are our investment advisors. One of the things about investment advisors is that they are working for the county to produce the documentation needed to go to market. They work with the underwriters, with bond counsel, and provide those bids on parity, and then use the time to evaluate them to get the TIC, which is true interest cost, so that we are getting the best, hopefully, value for being in market. One of the other things about this group is that they aren't underwriters, and so they are not selling our bonds to somebody else. They are coming to market for us so that we try to get the best rate and deal possible for us to have the lowest cost of issuance. So with that, I will have Kristen She is on the WebEx, and I will go through the PowerPoint. When you tell me to turn the page, I will do that at this time, and I'll let her go with that. We will give you a short presentation and then provide you both resolutions for questions and then for voting.
Thank you. My name is Kristen Hansen. I'm a Director Financial Advisor at PFM. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So Christy, can you move to first slide, please? Christy summarized what has taken place prior to this meeting. Back in March of 2022, the county board did adopt an initial resolution, set sail resolution for issuing general obligation bonds to finance your 2022 capital improvement projects. And then also, as been referenced, for the healthcare project building bonds, the initial resolution was adopted back in 2018. And since then, the county has issued a number of series of bonds in phases to help finance the project. And you can see that $2,445,000 was issued in 2019, $23,175,000 was issued in 2020, $19 million was issued in 2021. Today, we brought to market $19,225,000, which leaves a remaining authorization from that initial resolution of $3,155,000. Prior to going to market, we had a call with Moody's Investor Service. At that point, Moody's affirmed the county's AA1 rating, which is something you should be proud of. The highest rating you can have is a AAA, so this is just one notch below that, which results in kind of lower interest rates when you come to market. The rationale behind the county's rating is that you have measured economic and tax-based growth. You have healthy governmental and business type balance sheets. You have adding to your operating revenues in the last 3 audited years, which is also projected for fiscal year 21. You have average wealth and income metrics and affordable cost of living. Your debt levels remain average, including these two debt issues, and you have modest exposure to unfunded pension and OPEB liabilities. So you should applaud yourselves on kind of the management of the county and your bond ratings. So the next slide, and I heard some kind of comments before the meeting started. As you know and have heard, the market has been changing and has been going up. The feds have also indicated that they are going to increase rates several more times throughout the year, but this shows where 10-year AAA MMD rates are. And what we've included is your sales from 2020, 2021, and 2022. So you can see that today's market conditions is higher than when you had last sold your bonds and notes for prior CIP and healthcare center projects. And then the bottom graph kind of also shows what that yield would look like. So I don't have to tell the finance committee what's been happening with market conditions, but rates have been going up since the beginning of the year. So as Christy indicated, at 10 o'clock in our office, we took bids on both the 2022 A bonds, which are financing your capital improvement projects, as well as your 2022 B bonds, which finance the next phase of the healthcare center project. You'll see that for the 2022 A's that you received 3 bids. The best, lowest cost bid was from FHN Financial Capital Markets out of New York. Just so you know, last year we received only 2 bids, one from Baird and one from Huntington. The difference in the rate. So the rate today was 3.7418. And then you can see how close the second and third place bidders were. It was very tight bidding, which indicates a strong interest in your bond. But last year, when you issued 10-year notes, so they were obviously shorter term, and so interest rates are going to be lower for that reason, but also the market conditions were lower. The winning bid was a 1.2968. So this is what's been happening to the market since last year. Because of the type of bid that you received, which was called a premium bid, where you receive more money than the asking price of the bonds, we were able to reduce the issue size to $23,915,000 so that you are not overfunding your project costs. So we're pleased with the results for that sale. The other sale for the next phase of the healthcare center project, you also received 3 bids. The winning underwriter was also FHN Financial Capital Markets out of New York with a 3.8401, with Baird second and BOK Financials third. And you can also see the very close bidding from 3.84 for FHN, 3.857 for Baird, and then 3.86 for BOK. And so last year you received 4 bids for last year's phase of the healthcare center project, and the rate at that time was 1.99. You will note that there's a slight difference in the TIC between the 2022 and the A's and the 2022 B's. The reason is that there's no interest in the first year of the 2022 B bonds, and so you're going to get a slightly higher TIC because more bonds are maturing in the latter years than that first year. The bonds were sold competitively, as Christy indicated, because they're new money, and their bonds, they are required to be issued competitively. And also, you know that on this day in the market, because it was a competitive bid, you know that you're getting the, you had a competitive bid, and you're getting the kind of the best rate on this day.
One of the other things that we just wanted to let you know is that when we go to sale, and I'm just going to start this discussion, but when we go to sale, we're not selling the individual bonds. We're actually selling the entire package because we're going to borrow for all of it. So, Kristen, can you kind of tell what our customers, what kind of people or institutions are looking for bonds? We can see by the names of these that they're banks or investment companies, but when municipalities go to market, we're selling for what type of investor and what are they looking for, I guess. And I guess that would be, and then I would open it up for any questions that we had.
Okay, so when you bring bonds to competitive sale, and we prepare what's called an offering document, a prospectus that goes out to the underwriting community, which is, as Christy indicated, financial institutions, underwriters, banks, things like those types of financial entities. And those entities have buyers in what's called the secondary market that are interested in purchasing some or all of the bond issue. And so in the case of FHN, they actually bid in what's called a syndicate, where there was a number of other banks that were bidding with them because they all had different investors. And so when we go out to market, there's specifications that are set up, and so that the purchaser is going to buy all of the bond issue, and then what they do with that on the secondary market, or if they keep it in their portfolio, depends on kind of what their investors are looking for at this point in time in the market. And so at this point in time, they cannot do anything with the bonds. They can't sell them to the secondary market until the county board has officially taken action and awarded the sale. And you will note during the county board meeting that we will make sure that we record that time that the resolutions are passed, because they cannot do anything. They can't be selling these until official action has taken place.
Is there any questions for either Kristen, myself, or anyone in regards to how the sale took place or how the results ended up or what the next action should be?
Cody?
My only question was, what happens, I plan to support this, but what happens if we don't support this?
I will have PFM answer that first because we've never had that happen here. So I wouldn't know personally from our experience, but maybe Kristen could talk about that if she's had that question brought up before or has had any experience with that.
So the county has gone forward and taken actions to indicate that you intend to issue bonds. You passed initial resolutions, reimbursement resolutions, set sale resolutions. You put forward an offering document with specifications that indicate that you want to, take bids to finance your projects. If the resolution awarding the sale does not pass and the bids are rejected, going forward, this may affect the county's ability to, when you go to market, it might reduce the number of investors that might be interested in purchasing your bonds, as they will see that look like you are making a good faith effort to bring the bonds to market, and unless you have a kind of a valid reason for rejecting the bids, that could affect kind of your future marketability in the market. There will be some costs that have been incurred by the county by just going through the process. The bidding agent will be charging you. The entity that posted the preliminary official statement, which distributes the offering document to all of the investment community, because everybody in a fair playing field, there will be costs incurred. So from that standpoint, those are some of the kind of there's a market risk to doing this.
And this is in many cases the third time that we are, as a body, are dealing with each of these issues. One was at the initial approval, and we had a 3/4 vote on those, and then we had the resolution in March, and now this is sort of the finale where we're approving the sale. And I think that this would affect us significantly in future bond issues negatively. And I think there would be a hesitancy on the part, we'd have to rebuild trust. Chair Gibbs.
Yeah, I think if you think about it in this light, you go into the bank, you've told the bank, you've already signed, you've passed a resolution by a 3/4 majority, which is considered a supermajority of the board, saying, yep, we're planning on doing this. We back that up with another resolution saying, yep, we're going to award these. And then we go out to the market. And then we come back and say, oh, by the way, never mind, we're not going to do that anymore. Clearly, it's going to be, there's going to be an impact about the future trustworthiness of the county in doing business in the financial markets. And then on top of that, we have the fallout of not having the financing to be able to continue with projects that are, one, already been started, that being the North Central Healthcare remodel, and then some of those other projects that are on the capital improvement plan. We've always, in some cases, gone out to bid on some of those projects. So there again, we're going to have repercussions to the county by entities not willing to bid on projects that we potentially have. So there's multiple impacts if the board were to not vote in favor of awarding the bonds sale issue.
And the last one would be, not only would we be impacted, because we've tried extremely hard for the last 20 years, and before that, before I was here, to get a AA1 rating. We didn't have it. We had AA2, and we worked very hard to get that and to maintain it. And so that would be one thing that we would try to maintain, and that may be difficult. The second one is that it does look like that interest rates are increasing. And just by looking at this graph, if you would not borrow today, do whatever deliberations you would need to and decide to come back to market, regardless of the reputation, the strength of Marathon County's economy, any of that, you still have to deal with the fact that you have ever increasing interest rates. And they, from what we understand, the market isn't going to be going down anytime soon. So that would be just one more just economic impact that you would have based on this kind of this clear image from what's going on right now in the market.
Chair Gibbs.
Yeah, and just one other thing, and Christy alluded to it a little bit, where, Marathon County has a AA1 bond rating. It's the highest rating that Marathon County can receive. And that's because of we cannot get a AAA rating because of our population and our density and our economy. So we have the highest bond rating that this county will ever receive. And so that may be impacted. Financial institutions are not going to look favorable on Marathon County if we were to back out of the deal now.
Any other questions? Supervisor Lund.
I just need a little education, if you can help me out. And these are more on the terms. In Section 3, it talks about redemption provisions, and it gives dates of 2033 and 2032. But then in Section 5, it mentions up to 2042 with the tax levy. Can you just tell me what those two dates are all about and what's happening? Because I've read this like 3 times and I don't get it.
I've got Section 3 through 5 up, but I will have PFM, Kristen from PFM, explain that to you. In general, for us, it allows flexibility in the future, but I will have her talk a little bit more specific.
So the section of the resolutions that talks about the redemption provisions, this is basically when you go to market, you set what's called redemption or call features. This says what bonds could be financed in the future and at what and on what date. So it's basically that the call features are saying that the bonds that mature in 2033 and later can be refinanced as of February 1st, 2032. So if the market changes between now and February 1st of 2032 so that you could refund the bonds and realize economic savings, that gives you some flexibility down the road to save money. So that's the redemption provisions. You typically see those call features, redemption provisions on bonds, on longer bonds, on 20-year bonds. And then the other section, the tax provisions, basically says that, you have to make, these are general obligation bonds where you're pledging the taxing powers of the county to make those payments. And so those tax collections need to go out through the whole life of the bond to 2042. Bondholders like to get paid. So they're two separate types of provisions.
And then there's one other question. And then, Kristen, some of the flexibility that we had, because they just passed the resolution to call the airport bonds a 2010A. Do you want to maybe talk with that? That would be some place where we did have some flexibility and we're able to make a change to that bond. And I'll let you finish with that one.
So the 2010 airport bonds, they were also issued with a redemption feature that said that bonds that were maturing on a certain date could be either refinanced or paid off. And this particular case, because of the federal dollars that the airport received, they're able to pay off those bonds early because they're quote callable, and that will reduce the airport debt service. Will actually eliminate the debt service payments on the 2010 bonds going forward after the bonds are paid 6/1/2020.
So that would be one example where we did use the flexibility because the CARES Act money was able to be used specifically on those bonds. ARPA is not. So therefore, the airport doesn't have to worry about generating revenue through operations or lease payments through the car lease building vendors in order to do that. So that is one example where we did use a call provision to help us be able to strengthen the financial sustainability of the airport. One other question we had was the difference between notes and bonds. So I would let Kristen answer that one as well, because we've had notes in the past and we also have bonds. So there is a difference in definition.
Yes, so in state law, GO notes can be only 10 years in length or shorter. Bonds are if they're longer than 10 years, and they can be no more than 20 years. And so there's a difference between bonds and notes in terms of the duration. If you do issue bonds, there's a little bit more flexibility on the use of the funds than with GO bonds. In the past, you've been able to issue notes because the dollar amount was, was significantly less than the dollar amount this year. So in order to kind of minimize kind of the debt service payments, they're stretched out to over 20 years, the GO bonds. And so those are some of the differences in kind of state law related to GO bonds and notes in the state.
Any other questions? I'm going to call on Administrator Leonard just to do a quick overview of how we compare to other counties.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Robinson. So that is one thing that I'm sure, particularly for the new members, seems like you're borrowing a fairly substantial amount of money. How do we compare in terms of our debt capacity and also the amount of debt we have to other counties? And I will direct you to a document that many of you have. And if you don't have it, it's available online, and that is the Counties Association Green Book. And specifically what that document does is it provides general information ranging from demographics to finances to population, economic development for all the counties in the state of Wisconsin. And specifically, if you want to look at how Marathon County compares to other counties as it relates to debt, the amount of borrowing that we have outstanding, and Kristen already referenced a couple of bonds that we're in the process of calling, notes or bonds that we're in the process of calling, and then you have the borrowing before you. You can see that when you look at page 38 of the document, which according to the numbering of the PDF, it's page 40, but you'll see GO, again, general obligation debt per capita, and this is 2019, but it has Marathon County right at the top of the second column. You'll see $131 per capita in terms of debt. How does that compare to other counties? You'll see all 72 counties are listed, but at the bottom of each page, there are statewide measures, the average and the median. You'll see the average county in the state has $447 of GO debt per capita. Marathon County certainly well below the average as well as the median. And in fact, when you, the page before that, they have a color-coded illustration of the state county by county, and you'll see we fall well within the first quartile, the lowest 25% in terms of our GO debt per capita. So I think that's instructive. As Christy said, one of the things that has been central to us maintaining or achieving, I should say, and also maintaining our AA1 rating is our strong financial plan, our a relatively frugal approach with respect to borrowing. We borrow when necessary and when advantageous from a market perspective. So you'll see that that's borne out there. The other piece that I wanted to demonstrate to you is certainly debt capacity is important, but also tax levy, in my mind, is something that as supervisors, you likely have questions about how we compare to other counties in the state of Wisconsin. And you'll see that, again, this is what was levied in 2020, payable in 2021. Marathon County, top of the second column, with a tax rate of $4.53. You'll see that again, statewide measures are at the bottom. You have the average and the median, and you'll see there's quite a range relative to tax levy in the state of Wisconsin. So what is perhaps, at least in my mind, a little bit more helpful is when you look at our surrounding counties, and I referenced this in the 2022 budget message, we are the lowest tax levy rate of any of the surrounding counties within north central Wisconsin. You'll see statewide basis, we're solidly within that second quartile with our current rate. And again, the 2022 budget rate was $4.55. As Kristen referenced, when you're talking about GO debt, general obligation debt, you are essentially pledging the taxing authority of the municipality, in this case the county, as the method by which you will service that debt. But you'll again see that Marathon County very well-positioned relative to our peers in terms of peer-sized counties, but particularly within north central Wisconsin. If there are any questions, happy to take them at this point, but I think as Kristen and Christy referenced, and Chair Gibbs and Chair Robinson, when you look at kind of the reasons why, no one likes to borrow money, but when you look at the reasons why the approval of the resolutions as will be modified by this body today, from an administrative perspective, is a solid decision based on current market conditions and your need. You do have the lowest true interest cost from those bonds. They are competitive. You've already incurred the cost of borrowing, and as Christy referenced, based on what we know right now, the best information we have, the cost of capital is increasing. So even if you wish to deliberate, put this off, perhaps use some ARPA funding, if you look at the 2022 budget and previous budgets in our capital plan, you know we're going to need to borrow to continue to perform the necessary work that the county board has laid out. Right now makes solid sense to move forward with this borrowing, and as was referenced by, I believe, Chair Gibbs and also by Christy, we have undertaken a lot of work based on the policy direction from the board to this point. You have previously taken this up on numerous occasions, giving direction to staff. We have contractors on site beginning to perform a lot of this work. It's part of a larger capital plan, at least with respect to the north central work and also the individual capital projects that were set forth in the 2022 budget. But with that, certainly happy to take any additional questions, Chair Robinson.
Are there any questions of Administrator Leonard? If not, let's move on to the actual issues before us. And the first item is the sale of what was noticed as $24,165,000 worth of bonds for the 22A for the capital improvement plan, which is now $23,915,000. What are the wishes of the committee? Chair Gibbs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll make a motion to award the bid to FHN Financial Capital Markets, the bid for $23,915,000 general obligation capital improvement bonds, Series 2022A.
Is there a second? Second by Lemmer. Any discussion? Any discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. That motion carries. We'll move on to resolution authorizing the sale of $19,225,000 of general obligation bonds for the North Central Healthcare Project at our Series 2022B. What are your wishes? Chair Gibbs.
I'll make a motion to award the bonds of $19,225,000 general obligation healthcare project building bonds, Series 2022B, to FHN Financial Capital Markets.
Is there a second? Second by Hart. Any discussion? Any discussion? If not, all those in favor of approval of the resolution will signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Now we'll move on to educational presentations. Item A, the process of issuance of general obligation debt and continuing disclosure. Did we cover that? Is there anything we need to add to that in preparation?
We were just trying to do education. So before we actually issue the bonds, we have disclosure attorneys. It's the same as Corals Brady, that we have to then go through a series of questions to make sure that we're disclosing everything. I'm watching Corp Counsel Dan over here watch me. That we have to make sure that we notify the people, the capital markets, that we've done all of our disclosure, that we notify them if we had any defaults, any of the other items. And then we, on an annual basis, have to do a financial disclosure, and we register it with Emma. We do use our financial advisor to do that, so that anybody that is interested in any of our securities or any of the people that are holding them can go out to that clearinghouse and take a look at our audited financial statements and any other information that's needed by them to provide them information on how the county is doing financially, or if there's any change to our issuance or any additional securities that were not disclosed in previous offerings. So that's an ongoing process, and we do have a resolution that has been approved by this board in previous years that give us guidelines in order for us to meet the requirements of the SEC and IRS on that.
Any questions? All right, we will move on to committee reporting relationships overview. We'll start with the clerk.
Okay.
And in your packet were the portions of the budget message from the administrator.
Okay, thank you, Chair Robinson, for the opportunity to give a little bit of an overview of our departments and what we do. Basically, everything that we do is contained in the packet. Just a couple of updates of what we're working on this year. We did just finish wrapping up the April election. That was the county board election, and we did have our first ever county board recount that we conducted as part of that process, and that was successful, went very well. And I think what it did more than anything is just prove to the voters once again that the machines that we use for voting are accurate, as the ballot totals that we did in our recount and what was published on election night matched exactly. So I want to thank my staff and our canvas board, everyone who was involved in that process, for a very thorough and professional recount that we did there. Also, over the last couple of months, I've had 2 of my longtime staff members retire. So that presented us a little bit of an opportunity in the office where we hired 3 new staff members. So we kind of started from scratch, and we were able to find 3 wonderful people, and we have hit the ground running on a really positive note. We did have a little bit of a department orientation. The first day that we were all there, we did some work on identifying some of our personality and management and team strengths, and how we can work together to build a cohesive team and kind of function together based on what those strengths are. So that was a very positive exercise that we did. One of the new things we're doing is taking over all of the minutes and agendas for all of the standing committees except for environmental resources. So I am working with my new staff once they get acclimated to the office. Some of them will be taking over some of those standing committee meetings. My plan is to keep HR, Finance, and Executive myself, and then the other 4 committees will be spread out among the rest of my staff. I will educate everyone on the committees that I keep myself, so that if I'm gone for whatever reason, you can have the confidence that one of the staff members stepping in will be able to handle those responsibilities as well. We have already started work on the fall elections. We finished one, and then we're right off to the next. Ballots for the August primary will go out on June 22nd. This is going to be an absolutely packed full ballot. We were working with our vendor thinking that maybe we needed to go to a 17-inch ballot rather than a 14-inch ballot just because there are so many candidates for some of these offices. It looks like we'll be able, thankfully, to keep our regular size ballot, but it will be two-sided, packed full, and this is the partisan primary, so just a reminder, you can only vote in one party's primary, but we're off running. Potentially, we'll start on that programming tomorrow. If not tomorrow, it'll be early next week. We are in the process of continuing to work with the Treasurer's Office on wrapping up some of the tax deeds and launching that new process as far as our tax deed properties. So we'll continue work on that once the Treasurer's Office is finished with their responsibilities that they have to complete. And then we will just carry on. We're doing lots of marriage licenses, big season for passports. Lots of people are getting back to traveling again. So we have been very busy with issuing passports and helping people renew their passports. So those are the main things that we've been doing in our office.
Administrator Leonard?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Kim did a great job kicking it off, but I neglected, just to set a little bit of context, your committee is a little bit special. So I hope you all feel great about that. But through these updates, you'll see one thing that I think does separate you a little bit from some of the other departments we have, or other committees, I should say, that we have. You have a number of committees that you have these relationships in terms of reporting through your rules with those departments. And you have a distinction between a number of them. And the first three that are in your list are elected officials. So those elected officials, as the term kind of connotates, they are accountable to the voters. Every 4 years, there's an election. You'll have the clerk, the treasurer, and register of deeds are elected officials. Then you have 4 departments that report through your rules up through this committee that are appointed officials. Those are appointed by the county administrator, myself. So you'll have finance, HR, corporation counsel, and facilities and capital management. They're all going to come before you for similar sort of things. So they're going to come before you because operationally your rules require them to do so. So your rules, if we're going to add a allocated position within facilities and capital management, section 4.20 of your ordinances sets forth very specific detail, what that process looks like. It starts with me as an administrative review, then it goes to the Standing Committee of Jurisdiction, all of you. You also see operationally, because of your rules, any new position requests from any other department. For example, the Sheriff's Office. They go to their Standing Committee of Jurisdiction, Public Safety, but if they approve it, it nevertheless comes before this committee and ultimately the county board. So that's operationally. You also have policy issues as your agenda is broken up. Policy, operations, and education. If there's a request from Kim, for example, to say, hey, we want to do something differently with respect to a process that actually relates to all 3 of your elected officials that you're going to hear from in just a minute, the tax deed process. We want to change the process in accordance with state law. It's got to be in accordance with state law, but we want to change our operational ordinances within Marathon County. You would address that through a policy. We want to change the length of time we afford for individuals to become current, for example. So you're going to see policy and operational issues. These departments come before you at various intervals throughout the year. But I just want to make, again, one distinction that you're going to see is you do have elected official departments and you have appointed. And the chief distinction is the appointed ones, quite honestly, they have to listen to me. The elected ones, we just work together and have collaborative conversations based on the policy direction of the board. But it's a real distinct difference. You as the policymakers of the county board, ultimately you as the legislative body control the purse, but you are not the executive body. Many of those elected officials, again, the perfect example is the sheriff, that you can provide input, you can control budgets, but at the end of the day, there are spheres of control with it for those elected officials that live within each of the elected constitutional offices within the state of Wisconsin. I have a different role pursuant to statute in Chapter 59. So if you have any questions, happy to take those, but Kim did a great job giving you an overview of her department. A great place, again, to look. We did separate out from the budget book each of the specific departments to provide that background. We have 2 pages on each department. But thank you for the couple of minutes, and if you have any questions on what I've said, certainly ask, but as the department heads continue to introduce themselves first and foremost, but then also talk a little bit about the work that they do, feel free to ask those. But thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. As long as we're talking about how special we are as a committee, we are the only committee that is scheduled for 2 meetings a month. And some would argue that we're just plain slow, but others would argue that because of the magnitude of the issues that we deal with, that there's a need to do them. And what we've tried to do is take, again, that first meeting of the month, which we had previously, to be our action meeting, where we look at things to get them before the county board in a timely manner. And typically this meeting, with a few exceptions, such as the bonding, which is a time-sensitive issue, we will generally have this more as an educational meeting to give you more background to prepare to prepare you for votes at a future meeting. So look for the first meeting of the month on the Wednesday to be the action item agenda, and generally speaking, this will be more educational. And because we're special, we just need to meet more often. So with that, any questions of either Kim or Lance before we move on to Connie? All right.
Hello, everybody. I'm your elected county treasurer, and what I do in my office is I receive all the deposits from all the departments, and I invest all the money that goes to the county, including the ARPA money that we received. I collect postponed and delinquent real estate taxes. I distribute taxes to appropriate municipalities and school districts, because right now all of our municipalities collect the first installments, and then I collect the second. So right now we're in the process of doing delinquent taxes, and we're getting a lot of taxes coming in the mail right now, which is a good thing before July 31st. I handle the applications for the tax deed process, and we currently are working with Wisconsin Homeowners, Help for Homeowners, which is helping residents pay for their taxes right now. So with that being said, we're having a lot of residents come forward to us before we even start the tax deed process and paying their taxes, because they know that we are looking into it right now. So they've been being very diligent in getting those taxes paid up. And I oversee the property description functions, which is we work with our local assessors that are hired by all the municipalities, and we're currently doing their assessment roll books, and they're completing their board of reviews at this time. So, and then we submit the statement of assessments to the Department of Revenue, and then that's posted on their website. And basically, I generate the real estate and personal property tax bills that will be coming in December. So that's what I do in my department.
So are there any questions of Connie? Not? Thank you.
If I can add one thing, if you ever have questions about the county clerk, 5923 section of the statutes, chapter 59, section 23. For Connie, the treasurer, 5924. And the next one, Register of Deeds. Dean, where are you on this list? You are
59.
59 something.
5943, I believe.
You are right, 5943. Well played, Dean.
Okay, so hi, good afternoon. I'm Dean Strotz, the Register of Deeds. I've been in the Register of Deeds office for 23 years now. At first, I was Deputy Register, and I've been Register of Deeds since 2016. One thing I wanted to note about how the economy went during COVID, whereas a lot of it slowed down, I'm sure all of you know that real estate did not. So from our standpoint, things were even busier during COVID and remain so today. I expect that to slow down some as interest rates rise, but right now that hasn't affected us. It was great to have IT's help to be able to split my staff in half, so half could work from home and half could work in the office while still serving the public. We minimized our exposure and the risk of shutting down. So one thing that's happened recently is we had a software update, which has allowed us to digitally stamp documents. which reduces cost in things like labeling and also allows a quicker turnaround for recording. And we're already in the process of working with IT to do integrations for Workday when that comes along. So we're looking forward to change. I don't know, maybe. And a big thing for us is we've gone through a remodel. Lance came to me a while back and asked if I would be willing to part with some of our space for Courtroom B, which is now complete also. It took quite a while to get it done due to some supply chain issues, I'm sure. The new high-density shelving we got was manufactured in Canada, and then probably the truckers had some input in that, not getting here as quickly as it could have. But it went really well. We surrendered a quarter of our space for the new courtroom, and with the high-capacity storage, it's really made a big difference in the amount of space we need. We also increased the size of our lobby area and put some PCs for the public to work at out there. And also, working with IT, we've made our applications for vital records, birth, death, and marriage fully digital, so that instead of scribbling on a sheet of paper and us trying to decipher their writing, they now fill out a form fully digitally, and we don't use paper for that anymore either. Other than that, we are continue to increase our volume of documents that are recorded electronically. Right now, we're up to 57% of them are completely paperless to us. So that's an improvement, and that continues to grow all the time.
On that note, is your goal eventually to get to 100%?
I don't think 100% possible. You've always got individuals who are going to do the paperwork themselves and want to submit themselves. There has been some talk in the Register of Deeds Association statewide about pursuing 100% digital, but nothing's come of it so far.
Are there any questions of Dean? If not, thank you. Next, we'll move on to the Court Counsel.
All right, I guess I'll be the first from the subordinate group. If you need a statutory reference, that would be 5942. I'm actually not the Corp Counsel. I am just substituting today for Mike, who is on vacation in Maine, enjoying the beautiful scenery, hopefully eating lobster. I'm the Deputy Corporation Counsel, so I fill in for him when he's gone. Our Office of Corporation Counsel provides a wide variety of legal services to multiple county departments as well as the board. In addition to that, Marathon County is kind of unique because we have various intergovernmental agreements by which we provide legal services to North Central Healthcare, Aging and Disability Resource Center of Central Wisconsin, Lincoln County, Langlade County, and also the City County Information Technology Commission. As far as like the specific types of legal work that we do, in addition to the general legal services, which you're probably most familiar with, that Mike gives you advice on, would be involuntary mental health commitments, adult guardianship and protective services, and the county has an obligation under 5142 and Chapter 55 to provide these types of services for the community. Also, the children in need of protective services, or CHIPS, minor guardianships, termination of parental rights, child support enforcement and paternity actions, open meeting, public records requests, and then also general legal services for North Central Healthcare. We have 9 full-time employees in our office. Mike Pierner, he's the Corporation Counsel. He oversees the entire department, and he provides legal services across all areas of law previously mentioned. He advises and assists all members of the office on a variety of matters, and is also the primary sounding board for me on a variety of healthcare and business law topics that we handle for North Central Healthcare. I'm the Deputy Corporation Counsel, and I mainly provide legal services to North Central Healthcare. In addition to that, I fill in as coverage for CHIPS matters, and I also provide just general legal assistance and services for Michael Pierner, who's the Corporation Counsel. In addition to that, we also have 3 assistant corporation counsels. One of them handles primarily Chapter 54 and Chapter 55 cases, which would be adult guardianship and protective placements. Unfortunately, she is a wealth of knowledge, but she's going to be retiring, I believe, this August. And so we are now planning some contingencies and learning from her regarding what she does so that we can train the new person and we can fill in any gaps. And it's definitely going to be large shoes to fill. We also have 2 recently hired or relatively recently hired assistant corporation counsels who handle CHIPS matters, mental health commitments, child support actions, and bench warrants. Our office also has exceptional support staff. We have 2 outstanding paralegals. We also have 1 administrative coordinator, which is an administrative coordinator only in name. She's a trained paralegal and provides all of the services that paralegal would provide. And then we also have 1 property lister.
Are there any questions? Dan?
If I could add one thing, and again, you're a special department, you said subordinate, corporation counsel, but you all as board members, corporation counsel is relatively unique, similar to administration in that, I ask that you go through me, generally speaking, rather than reach out to all the department heads individually. The primary exception to that is corporation counsel's office. They are your first contact and your only contact. If you come to me for a confidential ethics opinion, I will tell you to go talk to corporation counsel. That is one of their jobs under statute, that they serve to the board to provide confidential ethics opinions to each of you should you believe you require one. And it is a good thing for you to get those confidential ethics opinions because they can be utilized by you should there ever be a question about any action you take while a member of the board. So just again, what was the statute, Dan? 5942. If you ever have a question about what corporation counsel does pursuant to statute or any of your obligations as a board member relative to, for example, based on any interest you may have, do you need to recuse yourself? Or, should circumstances warrant, do you need to resign from your position on the board? That is a question you would pose to corporation counsel, and they would provide you that legal advice.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Terry, for Facilities and Capital Management?
Thank you, sir.
In Dean County and others, you're welcome to stay, but you don't need to. Dan, on the other hand, we...
Okay, I'm Terry. I am Director of Facility and Capital Management. I love listening to Lance's opinions and hear him talk, so just so you know that.
That's subordinate looking for brownie points.
Call it what you want. Otherwise, I do have 2 of my favorite people in the room here as well as Finance and Corp Counsel. We work quite a bit with them, seeing as how the $40 million that you guys are looking to move forward will filter through our program. Most of that is construction or upkeep funding. We have 40 people abouts in the program between the custodians and maintenance and project staff. Most of that funding, I shouldn't say most of it, quite a bit of it though, is funding for the North Central Healthcare Campus. And if you scroll actually to the next page, it kind of gives a little map right there of where our phasing all is. If you don't know where the North Central Healthcare Campus is, you should drive by or stop in just to see what's really there. It is quite a facelift that's happened in the last few years. But currently, Anything in there in blue is done, so, all right, here, green is complete. Phase 4, which is remodeling of D-Wing, that's the behavioral health unit. The other 4, there's 2 4s. F-Wing, basically that's support services and a purchasing area. Also going on at the same time is 8, phase 8. If you look at the little spot there, there's 3 actual phases in 8 that are going on, and part of that is to move social services over into a space, basically trying to get more of the departments on a single campus instead of running all over town, combine buildings and get people on one campus. In phase 1 was the new therapy pool. There's a 96-bed nursing home tower that was put up, and that's operational currently. Other projects off that campus, some of the smaller things. You heard Dean say that their space was remodeled. That was done in-house by our own maintenance staff. So that cost wasn't part of this. Or basically, if we can do it in-house, we can do it for less than half of what it is to contract it out. So anyway, some of the other items that are, as you've seen probably as you pulled up, the courthouse exterior envelope project that's going on. It doesn't look like much, but it's just like your home. If you take a look and walk around the exterior of the campus, you know, the caulking lets loose on a window, or where things are seamed, you know, the dirt, the pollution, all that stuff that gets on, you know, they're acid washing the whole building. All those things, if you don't take care of your envelope of a building, you're gonna have a leak, and once you have a leak, it just compounds from there on out. So basically fixing everything on the outside first and working your way through. If you look at most of the things that we did, they are basically envelope projects, you know, to keep your buildings dry. The other thing that we're working on is A&B roof. That's back at the North Central Healthcare campus, actually. Let's see here. Controls. We have an old 3-story building from the 1930s over at the North Central campus. So basically all the building controls, so the heating, cooling, door locks, all of that stuff, basically making it all automated so that you can see everything that's happening from your laptop. You can turn the heat up, turn the heat down, bringing things up to date. The Mountain View, the old Mountain View Care Center building, that's getting a facelift on the outside as well, so we're repainting that. We have some parking lots that need to be repaved this year, and we have some sewer pipe issues. So all these things are back again over at the North Central Healthcare campus. All need to be done. I mean, think about it. If you don't repair your sewer line, what are you going to have? You know. So jail flooring replacement. Makos has been awarded that contract. They're working on that. Should be done in June. What's we got here? That's the majority, I guess, of what's happening. Any
So
questions?
Terry, could you just share with us sort of the shift I know that in my discussions with Supervisor Lumber, there, you know, we got rid of the Capital Improvement Committee. So can you talk to us about how you stage or how you prepare for the budget, or what your plans are to deal with some of the capital needs and some of our deferred maintenance needs?
Certainly. In previous years, basically what it was, all the department heads sent through a request. If their standing committee sent it through, that project came to the Capital Improvement Company, Anyway, they had a certain amount of money. Christy came up with years before, 2-year funds before leftovers, and those were the dollars that were spent then on the capital improvement program. So everything was ranked. You'd come in, give your spiel on why you needed it, what it qualified, and it got a number. So if I came in and presented and mine was ranked at 200, and Christy came in, because she's a much better presenter than me, she came in at 300. her project would get ranked, we ran out of money. Even though mine may be a new furnace to keep the building warm, she presented better, it qualified better, she got the money, we didn't. So what that did over the years was a lot of things were deferred, we call it deferred maintenance, because there just simply wasn't the funding there to do it. It's, nobody's fault, it's just, that's the way the system was set up. So there's a little catch-up going on now the last couple of years on some of those projects. Currently, what we're trying to do is, same thing, everybody sends in their requests, and then we put them into 3 different buckets. There's the bucket that is the new bucket, so new items, new whatever it may be. Then there's the maintenance bucket, the needs maintenance, end of life bucket. And then there's the regulations bucket. If it, regulations change, so you need to change something for some reason, those get funded. Okay, the new stuff, that gets talked about in this committee right here on where to go with that. What we also try and do now is bring a little more, I don't want to say honesty, but a little more weight to what the project requests are. So once they get to our office, we have 2 project managers and myself that'll go through the projects, and we kind of vet them, basically. Go through what, you really need this, why? And do all those question asking before we send them on through to this committee. So hopefully we have a little better handle on the projects that are coming and a little more accountability in it.
Anything, Allison, you'd like to add to that?
John, this is Administrator Leonard. Just to build on what Terry talked about, the direction from the board, I'm a big fan of analogies and short sentences, despite how long I talk. But, this idea of just fix it. If, Chair Robinson has used the example of the library roof. To Terry's point, when you have a failure of the building envelope, it compounds problems. We put off projects that were necessary for a variety of reasons, chief among them that the money we had from our audited financials from the 2 years prior wasn't enough to get far enough down the list to get to the things, despite the fact that they still needed to be done. So the board direction was just fix the things that need to be fixed, whether it's a area within the jail that needs to be brought up to code, air handlers that were not working, roofs, parking lots, those end-of-life maintenance regulatory pieces. Those we don't receive a lot of value from ranking them. They need to be done with one exception. If we're no longer going to be in that building, we can have an intelligent conversation about, do we need to maintain the envelope of that building, or are we going to divest ourselves of that building in the near future such that it's not necessary? But if we're going to stay in those buildings, we need to do that work. So in terms of, I started my comments relative to the committee overviews, talking about what items you're going to see, policy and operations, from each of these committees moving forward. You're going to see 2 very important documents come before you, and we're working to really put these together in a different way than historically has been the case from facilities and capital management and finance. The first is a 5-year capital improvement plan. It's been my experience, kind of like what Terry referenced, we were living in a 1-year capital improvement world where things would happen and we would react to them to fix them because we hadn't been proactive on the deferred maintenance side. So we want to have a very robust 5-year capital plan, a forecast of what we expect to bring before you over the next 5 years in terms of the maintenance and replacement that needs to be done. If we know that a parking lot, for example, in the courthouse, that the lifespan of the parking lot is, hey, within 20 years, you're going to need to redo that parking lot. We can tell you that it's on our capital cycle and when we believe it's going to need to be replaced. If we get on that 5-year plan and we see that it's in great condition, it might sit in that 5-year column for a couple of years, or maybe in that 3-year column, but it's at least on the plan. The other document you're going to see from Terry, and again, also from Finance, is that one-year capital funding plan. And you have already seen that, if you've been on the board, because that's in your annual budget. That's the thing that lays out the projects we're going to do in this next year, and it provides a funding plan for how we're going to tackle those things. The 5-year plan doesn't identify funding streams for various projects necessarily. You know, one of the things you've been talking about at the board level for a long time has been a regional forensic science center, a regional morgue, making sure that that's on the 5-year plan. And then discussing when we get to the 1-year portion of that, how to pay for it. But that 5-year capital plan and that 1-year capital plan as a part of the budget are some of the things that Terry's staff is instrumental in working on.
Kurt?
The one thing I would add is, historically, the process has been the process. But I think what we, as a board, have looked at is we haven't done a good enough job of identifying when stuff needs maintenance and when stuff is at its end of life. And so we provided the maintenance, facilities and maintenance, a new program. They're still working the bugs out of the program, but the program is an inventory of all of the assets that the county owns, including buildings and facilities, and the state of the maintenance of that roof, and the year, the age of the HVAC system and the control systems, so that we can get a better handle on, as the administrator talked about, that projection of 5 years, when those things are going to hit end of life, and when we need to think about starting to look at replacing those items, rather than being in an emergency situation where, oh, we no longer have heat or air conditioning in this building. And so I think we're looking at trying to do a better job of managing the facilities that the county has. And that is going to lead to some questions that the board's going to have to identify, and projects that are going to have to identify is what do we do with some of the potentially excess properties that we have. So, but I think Terry and his department has done an excellent job of moving in the right direction as far as identifying projects as they, and the board has moved in that direction of let's maintain what we have, because it's an asset and not a liability.
Any other questions? If not, thank you, Terry. Next, we'll move on to the Finance Department. Christy?
Hi, I'm Christy Palmer. I work in the Finance Department, and we do a lot of things every day. One of my favorite parts about my job is I get to learn new things every day, and some of them have to do with work, and some of them I never knew I'd learn at work. Today was exciting. No, I do not like borrowing, but I do like knowing how the market reacts to when we go and we try to do the best job we can presenting ourselves. And as you can see, the market reacted favorably based on the situation that we're in right now in the economy, with inflation, with yields going up. So that's interesting to me. We do a lot of work with all the departments. As Terry said, the departments you see listed on your agenda are the ones I probably work with almost every day. And we have besides me, we have 6 people in the department. Number one thing we do that's important to most of the other county employees is we do payroll. So that would be staff within the Finance Department. We do the paying of the bills. We work with the county administrator on the budget. We work with the county treasurer in regards to the investment plan. We work with facilities to make sure that we're getting the money and the funding, and we understand what projects need to be done when, and time those so that we can get the projects done on time with the money needed to get them done as planned. Work with employee resources, because even though we do the payroll, they do the hiring, so we work hand in hand with all of the work that needs to go in between that. And I'm trying to be best friends with Corp Counsel, because they're the ones that keep us all out of trouble, and they're really smart too. So if I would need an answer that needs a lot of thought, I definitely make sure I go to them. No, the Finance Department does not have a statute attached to it, but I do represent the local government representative on the State of Wisconsin Investment Board, and that board is governed by statute 15.76. So I do have a statute attached to one of my duties as assigned through the Marathon County Finance Department. That is one of the nine trustees for the State of Wisconsin Investment Board. We do manage the WRS investments, plus several other State of Wisconsin investments. And I am the local government representative, which means that it is a person with knowledge of finances and municipal finances that works for a municipality with a certain limit on the population, and that we do participate within the local government investment pool. So that is another thing that we do work with, not only as a county, but also individually to represent all local Wisconsin governments in that aspect. Other than that, we're working on the Workday implementation, and right now we're doing borrowing. So after I get that wrapped up into bed tomorrow, then there will be lots and lots of paperwork on the back end of that I'll be working with the county clerk and corp counsel on.
Christy, I would ask both you and Molly to address what benefits you see coming out of the ERP system in terms of helping us in our policymaking role and what value that will be bringing.
I will let Molly talk about her department, and I will bring you back a visual that will explain everything.
It's a significant investment in software and in hardware and
One of the
staff
things
time.
that Terry does is he does all of the capital projects, and our software at this time is not able to handle the capacity of a multi-year project. So I'm going to come back with a spreadsheet that's an 11 by 17 piece of paper in color, because that's the only way that I can manage his $67 million project right now, really, because we don't have multi-year budgeting, and we're really looking forward to getting that in. The other one would be all of the paper forms that you filled out when you started. They then get scanned in and emailed to Molly's staff, who then emails them to our staff, who then gives them to my student intern, Sam, who will scan them back electronically into a filing system. So I guess those are, I won't go get the visual, but that's really where we're at. We're trying to eliminate touching a document by more than one person, converting it from electronic to paper to electronic again, or any of those items. And I think that's where you're going to see the efficiencies.
If this is Administrator Leonard, if I could add one thing in terms of how I think Workday, and my knowledge is very small compared to both the Christy and Molly, but my sense is it's going to help you, particularly on the capital side, and on the budget side, start to give you more, not real time, but more frequent updates on where we are with budget to actual throughout the year. We hope to be able to provide you information that will assist you in making the policy decisions you have to make as a board. Again, like Sarah Dietrich-Kastorf talked about from Wisconsin Counties Association, to be visionary and start to see how your current financials impact where you are currently and where you want to go. You'll be able to see better where our cost centers are and what opportunities, hopefully, staff can bring you actionable information, because you have to make policy decisions about how do you want the county to operate. Right now your ordinance is requiring me to bring you new position requests to this body and to all the standing committees. If I want to fundamentally change the way we're organized, my hope is Workday is going to allow me the tool to better do that. And I do think there are a couple of opportunities for us to do that in terms of change the way that the county is organized relative to staff in terms of service delivery, but then also hopefully give you updated information about what does it cost to deliver the services that you deliver. You choose the services that we deliver, provided statutes give you the opportunity to not deliver some. Many are statutorily mandated, and You should have good oversight in terms of, are we getting good value on the way we're delivering it? But if you want to have information about what it costs to deliver a service, my hope is Workday, through a lot of the inputs that Christy's talking about, the way we're able to drill down better into information, we'll be able to give you that so you can decide, is this a good use of taxpayer funds, or do we want to go in a different direction? One example that you're going to see in the next year at the full board level, our health department has been working very diligently to try to evaluate, is the Start Right program the right program to execute the direction, from the board through its strategic plan, or should we look at a different program, perhaps a nurse home partnership program, home visiting program? And we'll bring you a recommendation. But at the end of the day, what programs we deliver, that's a board decision. How we deliver them is a staff decision. And my hope is that Workday helps on both of those continuums.
Any questions of Christy? Molly? You saved the best for last?
Yeah, of course. Good afternoon. I'm Molly Adzik. I'm the Employee Resources Director. My department's mission is in front of you in the packet, and that's to align all the human resource programs to ensure that Marathon County is a preferred employer, which attracts and retains high-performing employees who contribute to the county's mission and vision. I also oversee our risk management programs that support our mission by protecting the county's property and financial assets and provide safety to our employees and the public. I've got 7 allocated positions within my department, myself as the director, an administrative coordinator, our risk manager, and then 4 employee resource analysts. One of those analysts is focused on our benefit administration. One analyst is responsible primarily for our FMLA and workers' comp. And then I have 2 workforce strategists focused primarily on the fair and effective recruitment and retention strategies for the county, which is a big job. Just for reference, we currently have 63 active recruitments for open allocated positions in the county. So no small tasks. We've had 50 separations from the county since January. The attraction and the retention of talent is a big job. All employees under our department are also cross-trained to provide service and act as a trusted resource for all current and prospective county employees. Our department is responsible for the development and enforcement of personnel policies and procedures, ensuring legal compliance, managing benefit and compensation plans, employee training from both a safety and compliance, as well as a growth and development standpoint. We're responsible for talent attraction, retention, and talent management, providing resources and consultation to support a positive workplace culture, the negotiation of the county's collective bargaining agreements, as well as the county's liability and property insurance. We insure over $358 million worth of county-owned equipment and property. So some things, Lance stole a little bit of my thunder, but some things you'll see coming from my department to this committee would be the new and expanded position requests. If a department is looking for a new position to be allocated, that would come from me to you. Compensation grade and comp plan adjustments, elected official salaries, again, those bargaining contracts, the disallowance of liability claims against the county, and then a decision potentially to purchase property insurance for tax deed properties. We already alluded to some of the current large-scale projects underway in employee resources, one of which being the enterprise resource planning software, which will provide a kind of single source of reliable and real-time data. Currently, we do not have an HRS system. There is no HR data reporting tool or system. We operate off of spreadsheets, which require a lot of manual data input, which, as you can imagine, leaves room for error. There's a lot of emailing back and forth, as Christy mentioned, from her department to my department, to our CCIT, to facilities, to let people know, when somebody's starting, when somebody's terminating, when somebody's ending. And again, a lot of moving pieces and manual process leads to errors and a delay in decision making. So we're really excited about that. We are also in the middle of a classification and compensation study, which again should be helpful when it comes to the attraction and retention of talent. And you'll continue to see and hear updates on both of those projects in the coming months. Any questions?
Are there any questions of Molly? Thank you for that overview. All right. Dan, I didn't realize how loved the Corporation Council was before.
Oh, I also love Corporation Council.
You know, I feel the love when you're here, but I mean, when Mike's here, we're not so sure that there's as much love. But just pass that on to him when he returns from vacation. Hopefully,
He just picks the wrong days to skip out.
We thank you all, and we thank you not only for the presentations today, but for the ongoing work that you do to make this the healthiest, safest, and most prosperous county, and do things efficiently. So thank you for those overviews. Any questions before we move on? All right. If not, the next document we're going to go over is more for information only, but this committee, again, is special. Last session, we adopted a work plan for the committee because we had a lot of items that were important that we'd never seemed to really move on through the policymaking process. So we sat down and we identified a number of projects and issues outside of the routine activities that we're engaged in, and developed a plan of action or a committee work plan. And some of them we had success with, some we didn't. And there were a number of intervening factors, including the American Rescue Plan dollars. But I just wanted to bring it to your attention with the thought of both introducing it to you from a historical perspective, but then challenging you to think about what items we might want to put on the list for the next 2 years. And I'm going to try to very quickly go over these items, and we'll follow up on it at future meetings. The first item was priority-based budgeting. We're working with a firm out of Denver relative to how do we establish priorities for the budget and evaluate them. And I think we found that there were limitations within the current financial system. And Lance, I'll turn that.
Sure, I think that's a great point. So priority-based budgeting, at its core, it tries to give what I think is really important information to the policymakers, and that is it's trying to give you some accurate, not precise, but accurate information about what it costs to deliver the programs that we offer. And one of the issues we have is, as Chair Robinson referenced, the information we're getting out of our financial system is at the very least cumbersome. And we haven't been able to allocate additional staff necessary to really help you do that. But the idea is it transforms our budget from what you'll see, and what you'll see if you look at our comprehensive budget, which is a line item budget, you can find out how much Corporation Council spends on paper and office supplies or personnel or contracted personnel. We can tell you in Terry's office, if we do contract for something, what's that budget look like? But it doesn't help you understand really what does it cost, what do we spend within a county on the preparation of the annual budget? What does it cost to, within Terry's office, to perform custodial services across all of our buildings? There's a lot of things that funnel up into that. For custodial, for example, you have personnel, that is the wages we pay. You also have products and materials. We also have perhaps when we look to need to buy equipment to deliver that service. So priority-based budgeting, the idea is rolling all those things up into an overall structure of what it costs to deliver a service. The previous deputy administrator was going to lead that project. We did some important work last year, but as Chair Robinson referenced, a fair amount of our time was diverted based on other needs.
Capital improvement process. In last session, we appointed a subcommittee led by Supervisor Leahy to make recommendations, and we have revised the process to phase out the capital improvement committee and try to look to Terry and the professional staff at facilities and capital management to assist us. But there are a few issues that we need to address going forward. Years ago, all of our software was capitalized, and we bought it, and then now we're leasing it. How do we deal with that in the budgeting process? And I think we quite honestly have to take a good look at rolling stock in equipment replacement and what sort of levels we're funding that at. So we have some other policy issues that remain out there in light of changes in the industries and others, and how we're going to fund those going forward. So we'll probably be talking about that in the future. Anything, Allison, you want to add, or others?
The only thing I'll add is, and I referenced this before, one thing that you will see differently this year, and our deadline for departments was just last week, Friday, to get those requests in for capital projects for that 5-year capital plan. Terry, Christy, and I are going to sit down and compile all that information and start to build that 5-year capital plan. And you're actually going to get a presentation prior to the budget from us on what that forecast looks like. We're going to try something new, which is take it to this committee and ultimately take it to the full board. When you approve the 5-year capital plan, you're not saying we're for sure going to do everything, but you're receiving that information.
Performance standards for programs. One of the things we talked about was setting dashboards for departments, and I think the last budget was a significant improvement over previous budgets in both highlighting what the accomplishments were and some of the challenges ahead. I think our new system ERP will help us in our ability to track information, and that's very much a work in progress.
Yeah, one caveat, that system is not going to be up and running for this year's budget, so while I hope this coming year's budget will still be an incremental improvement over last year's, it's not going to be Workday generated. That said, as it relates to performance standards, Workday should help us try to drill down into what those performance measures look like. I also I will be bringing to this committee a request through the budget process for a new position within administration. We are most of the way there with funding for a budget office, or a data officer, because I think that's one of the real gaps we've had across the county. Not only having information, we have a lot of data through a lot of different systems, but developing the insight from that data and then helping us across all of our business units, all of our departments, take that insight and actually change our business processes. So most of that work is done, but you'll see that also this coming year.
Long-term facilities plan, we're trying to figure out, we've got facilities everywhere, and I think we're working with Terry and administration on trying to figure out what buildings do we need, where do we need them. The West Side Master Plan, which had a public hearing or a public informational meeting last week, was one of those efforts of what's the future use of Marathon Park, the Highway Department, Parks Department, et cetera. And we need to, that will be an ongoing basis, but I think part of that goes hand in hand with the policy and sale and disposition of excess county property. What do we do if we abandon the social services building? What do we do if we relocate the departments on River Drive? And how do we deal with those? Both of those are a work in progress. Lance, anything? Tax delinquent property process and policy setting. Currently, we, under state statutes, we buy the back taxes. If people don't pay their taxes, the county holds all other local units of government harmless. We pay them. We basically buy the tax rolls each and every year. So we become, in essence, a banker. And when people don't pay them within a time certain, generally 3 or 4 years, we have the ability to take it through tax foreclosure. We have a significant number of properties and parcels where we've let those taxes accumulate 10 plus years, and we can't go back taxes after 10 years. So we've identified as one of our priorities, how do we evaluate those properties? When do we take them, and under what conditions do we take them, and try to streamline the processes? That was complicated recently by legislative changes on what happens when we in turn sell the property we foreclosed on. So we'll need to spend some time reconciling the new state law with our policies and procedures. But Kim has a role in it, Connie had a role in it, and others, and the Corp Council's involved in it. And we're just looking to streamline our process and evaluate what the best thing is going forward. Anything to add? New position request process and ranking. Lance, I'll let.
Sure. We, each year, I should say, each term of the county board, you have a rules review process, and as I referenced before, your new position request process is set forth in the rules, in your ordinances, section 4.20. So there was a desire by this committee to take a look at that, and you did make, through the rules process and ultimately at the county board level, at your organizational meeting, you did make some modifications, albeit them slight, to that ordinance to provide some additional flexibility, primarily to administration, to bring requests before you as the business of the county requires it. Historically, the requests were to be batched to come to HR, Finance, and Property for review. You removed the requirement for that batching and provided just general direction that if possible, administration is to kind of compile those outside the budget requests, not to bring one every month. But as you'll see from your past agendas, we've been very, from an HR, finance, and administration perspective, we've been very hesitant to bring new position requests to the committee and worked to find as many operational ways to deliver the service with the staff we have, as opposed to adding staff over the last 2 years. And certainly I don't think that's going to change, but you did make some changes through the annual rules process.
All right, evaluation of health insurance options, and we had a work group. Supervisor Fisher was a member of that, former Supervisor Fisher. Do you want to just, we made some changes and we're working on others.
Sure. Simply put, we are currently fully insured, and we are in the process, and we did it last year, and we're continuing that process, and Molly can elaborate, but we're evaluating whether a different delivery mechanism is appropriate, and that the primary one we're evaluating is whether we want to move to be self-funded. Anything you want to add?
I think that pretty much sums it up. Thanks, Lance.
Thank you. We talked about sale and disposition of property, strategic plan. We don't have a lot of formal responsibilities under the plan, but we certainly have a role in playing or in evaluating an overview of what's happening relative to the implementation of the plan. That's ongoing, and we will be talking about that at meetings on a regular basis. Diversity, inclusion, employment policies, and practice review. I think what we're finding is that there's a shortage of workers, so we need to be as diverse and inclusive as possible. We didn't do a lot as a committee last time. We're looking to Molly, and Molly's made a number of changes internally to try to expand our diversity and inclusiveness in recruiting practices, and I think from a policy perspective, we'll need to focus in on that. That was one of the rule changes that we incorporated into our committee charge for this term.
And I can add one thing. We did take, through the Diversity Affairs Commission, one of the things that they did was they did review all of our internal HR policies just to provide feedback, and I think that was certainly well received from our perspective to make sure that, we were considering all perspectives when putting together our policies. A lot of the changes, virtually all of the changes that we ultimately adopted were language changes, making sure that our language was as open and inclusive to all communities. But I think, as Chair Robinson referenced, one of the new responsibilities of this body is to take up the mantle of that work.
Customer service expectations, policy setting. This was put in Do we need to develop customer service expectations? I know that when I worked for the DNR, the expectation is that you answered every email or phone call within a day. Do we need some of those? And I think we will look at that. That was one of the lower priorities going forward, but it's something we'll talk about going forward. But time and priorities ran out. Tax increment financing, I know that this is a concern of Chair Gibbs and others. Under state law, it's possible, there's a tax increment financing available to local governments. It was originally a X amount of years, and now they've got 23 years, and it extends, and it was 5% evaluation, now it's up to 12% evaluation. The question is that affects us in our revenues, and money is moved. Are there some policy issues or priorities that we might want to see addressed by the legislature? We didn't get at that issue last term, but I think it's one that we will probably want to look at. When you start taking 12% of your valuation off the tax rolls for the purposes of refinancing development bonds, it has a big impact on all taxing entities. Property insurance evaluation. Lance, I'll turn that over to you.
Sure. So much like all of you, I hope, the property you own, you insure it. The county is no different. We are insured by WMIC. I'm going to get the acronym wrong, but Wisconsin. Properties MPIC, correct. I know I would get that insurance acronym wrong. But, one thing we haven't done, as far as I can reflect back, and my experience is we haven't put that out for bid to see is the service we're getting commensurate with the cost that we're paying for that insurance. So that was one thing identified by the committee. We didn't move forward with any evaluation of that, but certainly it would remain. If the committee wants to make it a priority and the board wants to make it a priority, it can get on the work plan, and we simply need to talk about resource allocation to get that done.
Renewable energy policy, we didn't do a lot of work, but do we want green buildings going forward? How sustainable should they be? Earlier this afternoon, we had a meeting of the Metropolitan Planning Organization where they were talking about carbon reduction funds from the feds. How actively should we pursue those? And the city of Wausau had a proposal to put more LED lighting in. Weston wanted an electronic forklift, and Rim Mountain wanted an electronic patrol car. So are there some opportunities for us to become greener in our purchasing policies, and when do we build in solar or other renewable energy sources into our building design? But again, we haven't done a lot with that. We'll have to work with Terry and others, and there has to be a cost effectiveness to it, but that will be something we'll look at. And finally, through Dan's outstanding work last year, we were able to update our procurement policy, and we actually adopted that at the end of the year. And first time in how many years?
It's been a while, I think since 90s at least. But Michael Purner also had a very significant contribution towards that, so I don't want to take all the credit.
He's on vacation. But the Corporation Counsel's office in its entirety worked on it, both Dan and Mike and others, and we did have a win there. So that's what we did last time. I just throw it out there for context. What's missing on this plan that we didn't anticipate was the American Rescue Plan Act and how we would deal with it. This was, basically formal, understanding what all the ramifications were of the pandemic. We pivoted well as a county and through outstanding leadership. But I will ask that we try to identify and set some priorities going forward. So again, we're just bringing it to your attention from a historical perspective. Give some thought to whether or not you want other items added to it, and we'll have that discussion at a future meeting. Anything, Kurt, from your perspective, plans? All right. With that, anything you'd like to see considered at future meetings?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One thing that that this county has been a participant in is the opioid litigation. And it looks as though we're going to be receiving funds at some point this year. Now, those funds are restricted as far as what they can be utilized for spelled out in the agreement for the settlement. It's all related to treatment and or prevention of opioid abuse. Now, the one thing that I think we'll be looking at is that the first part of this structured settlement is over an 18-year period with multiple entities providing the funding sources that will be paying out to the counties. Next Tuesday, WCA will be offering a program and information on the ability to potentially securitize those funds. And what that really means is similar to when the state received the funding from the tobacco settlement, the state effectively took and chose to settle for one-time funding up front rather than to receive those funds over the length and the term of the settlement. In this case, that is going to be discussed, and the options, it's clearly just an option. And so one of the things that I think we will have to discuss is, and the advantages and the disadvantages to potentially securitizing those funds. And the reason, some of the reasons that you might look at it is, in essence, instead of taking, according to the current structure, is about $3 million that the county will receive, over 18 years. But the question becomes, will some of those companies actually exist some 18 years from now to be in a position to pay out those funds? And so the option to securitize those funds, securitizing them and getting some dollars all up front, and the risk then remains to the individual that's buying those securities out. So I will be attending that meeting next Tuesday at noon, and then provide a little bit of context back to this committee. But again, it's something that is an option. It is nothing that is required. But like I say, I think we would need to really consider the pluses and the minuses there.
So at one of our future meetings, we'll dedicate a considerable amount of time to just the background and what our options are. Anything else? If not, our next meeting is on June 8th at 3, and that's our action item meeting. If there's a motion to adjourn would be in order. Chair Gibbs, seconded by Hart. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. That motion carries. We will see you all at 7.